All right, good morning, everybody. I hope everyone had a lot of rest last night and you're ready for today. Thank you all again for being here. I wanted to do a quick little side note. I see, or many of you see that there's a zebra theme in a lot of our signage and around, and that originated when students in medical school were told, think horses, not zebras, which meant don't go crazy, don't be looking for the rare, just rule out every common possibility. And we're here today because we are the zebras, and for a long time, people were looking at us like we were horses, and we just weren't. And so we're really fortunate today to have some medical professionals that are smart and motivated and here to talk about JdVS and what it is, why we're here. So this morning we have an extra special panel. In the beginning, having a young child diagnosed was hard in its own ways, and then we were fortunate enough to meet some adult caregivers, and that gave us an entirely new perspective. And we're so fortunate to be able to join forces and learn from them and connect and really follow their lead and learn all their tricks and tips. And so we have Elizabeth Jacobs here. She's the mom of Bradley, and she's going to be moderating our adult caregiver panel.
Good morning, everyone. I'm honored and grateful to be able to be here at the summit, and I wanted to thank you all for being here because of you, we're able to learn and share and grow as a community. So thank you for being here. But before we begin our program, I really wanted to say thank you to Kara, Rachel, and Marinda. What they have done is nothing short of Herculean. They formed our Facebook group years ago and brought us together, but for them, we wouldn't be here. They formed the 501c3, they go to rare disease conferences, they manage the website, they learned how to fundraise, they formed a medical board, all while they're working full-time and raising their families. So let's give a round of applause and thank you. So here's the overview of today's session. We're going to have a little bit of presentation, short answers to about 5 questions. And I'll introduce Kathleen Adams, mother of Mollie, Marinda Toit, mother of Daniel, and Becky Noel, mother of Tammi. And then we're going to break out into tables. There are signs on 4 tables, and we will rotate, if you want, at 15-minute intervals. So, but I'm sorry, I forgot to say, we're going to have questions and answers. So we're going to limit this till 9:30. So we're going to dive right in. So, I stated your name and your champion's name, so we're going to skip that question. So we'll just start each question with you, Kathleen, okay? What were or are the top 2 or 3 areas of concern or focus from ages 15 to 18?
Cyclic vomiting syndrome from age 1.5 to age 11 undiagnosed. It robbed Mollie of a lot of her childhood. Behavior concerns, stranger danger, wanting to be in a physical space that belonged to somebody else a lot of the time. Stubborn, and no sense of consequences for anything. What goes in your mouth goes on your body. Mollie is getting it now. That's it.
Marinda?
So for us, initially the behavioral issues. In school, had a really hard time. Daniel needed one-to-one support throughout even preschool. I had a very hard time transitioning between activities. Same thing with the consequences, no regard for any consequences, cannot think ahead. If I do this, this is what's going to happen. And then we struggled with speech and fine and gross motor skills. So we did the whole OT-PT speech therapy 3 times a week. Thought he was never going to speak, and if any of you know Daniel now, it's quite the opposite. And we thought he was never going to walk because he had such a hard time just coordinating steps, doing just a step up, block. He could not jump. He was terrified of falling. So all of that anxiety and that comes with it as well. So OT, PT, speech really, really helped him. And then, of course, now with the teenage years, he's not quite an adult. He's 16 now. This is all the hormonal changes that, it's hard to be a teenager when you're neurotypical, and then add our JdVS, big feelings, big emotions. We go from crying to laughing in 2 seconds, just feeling everything so much more intense and not know what to do with a big emotion sometimes, not know how to express it, not know how to deal with it. And then getting other people to also understand, what they're going through and how they're struggling with all these big emotions. That's I think our biggest 3 challenges.
Okay, I think with Tammi from the very beginning, I think her biggest issue was the vomiting. We used to laugh and say that at 2 years old, Tammi was the only 2-year-old that we knew that could hug a toilet and knew exactly what that was and exactly what it entailed. She spent many nights sleeping on the floor in the bathroom because once she got started, it was easier to just make her a bed there and not have to go back and forth. We knew kind of what was going on. But at that time, we didn't get Tammi's diagnosis until she was 39. So we didn't know, we just dealt with it as she was growing up. It went from, and now we're finding out with the cyclical, it was cycles, because it went from happening once every 2 weeks to happening once every 6 months to going back to happening every 3 days. And that for us was a constant struggle because we were forever going somewhere trying to find an answer and never actually could. Once she got into the actually not even teenage years, probably early, even at 10, 11, 12, the hormones started kicking in. And that then became our biggest challenge, was keeping her safe because she had no boundaries. If you were her friend, you were her best friend. And she wanted to be with you at all times. So I think for us, the hormones going crazy was probably our biggest issue. And we, at times, still have to deal with that.
Thank you. So for Bradley, from 5 to 18, the biggest issue was the ability to connect with other people appropriately and positively and make friendships. It just was so hard for him to make friendships. When we first let him go on Facebook, he friended one of his best friends, all her friends. He thought that meant friends. And there were just so many nuances to making friends. It wasn't until he was probably in like 11th grade that he made his first friend, like what I would say real friend. So that really was big. And then at the same time, it's hard to pick, right? Anxiety and attention management were huge. Anxiety I often say, all these issues are like whack-a-mole. They're just popping up, and you're hitting all like 3 or 4 things at the same exact time. And so it's really hard to pick. And then the third at the same time was overall health. This is a spectrum disorder, right? Like anything, like autism spectrum disorder. I consider JdVS a spectrum disorder too, because as you meet people and talk, sure, everybody may have cyclic vomiting, but they'll have it in different degrees. Bradley had it too. He's slept many nights on the bathroom floor. I know exactly what you're talking about. But he had other health issues too. So I think he's a little bit on the extreme about that. So when he was, like from 3 months old, I was at the pediatrician's office every single week. I mean, it was just something else, ear infections, throat infection. His immune system was checked, but I believe it was compromised. And so he does have an immune system disorder. So the overall health, he's fine, but he's checked for a lot of things to this day. The anxiety, I would say, is the biggest issue. And anyway, also, I wanted to say, if you have questions, because this Q&A, will go fast, write them down, and you'll find any of us and ask us whatever you want to ask. Okay, next question. For the same age range, 5 to 18, which environment was more challenging, home or school, and why? And what strategies were helpful to improve the environmental challenges? Kathleen?
Home was more challenging because Mollie was either hospitalized or home. She missed probably a third to two-thirds of her school days. So it was not so often she was there, and school went relatively smoothly, and the school nurse was certainly part of that team. So that's it.
Okay. Marinda?
For us, it was school for sure. He was always in trouble. He would go to school in the morning, and then they would call halfway through the day, Daniel did this, or he's not listening, and that was really hard for us, because at the time we didn't know, what was going on, and didn't have any answers. So growing up in South Africa, we had very strict parents, and that's what we thought is the right thing to do, right? We were strict, no nonsense, and so Daniel would many days come home and be sent to his room because he's not listening, and it wasn't until he was 8 years old and we finally got the diagnosis that we really had the opportunity to sit down and think, okay, what are his struggles? What does it look like? How can we better support him? So it was hard on us as a family, but then I'm sure for him too, because he was just in trouble all the time. And so when we finally figured it out, and he is in special education, he had a one-to-one aide in school, pretty much throughout his schooling, because he would just get up and walk out of the classroom and go speak to people he sees across the playground, and think nothing of it. So that was hard to get the support for him. So I went to countless IEP meetings. I have a text thread with his teacher. She was amazing. And someday I'm going to write a book and publish it all, because the things that came through from those text messages, you can't make it up. It's just. And then now really just high school has been very challenging. There is no private schooling for special education in our region. So public high school, nowadays, it was a challenge. He lasted about 6 days, and then we decided to take him out, and he's in a charter school right now, so he's being homeschooled. That works much better. He can do school when he feels like it. He's doing a certificate of completion, so he's not pushed for certain, metrics that he has to meet. So that works very well for us.
Okay, I think for us, trying to decide whether it was, which was most challenging, probably school, especially at the very beginning. Tammi started as, she started in a program at 3 years old run by the ARC, the Association for Retarded Citizens. They kept her there for that first year. She was not speaking at that point. That kind of got the talking started. The following year, she ended up going into a hearing impaired class, which I guess at that time, realizing that the not hearing real well, was affecting the speech. She ended up getting into kindergarten probably a year late. Kindergarten made no sense to her. The school repeated kindergarten, it still made no sense to her. They pushed her on to first grade, and we were saying the whole time, something is going on. She needs to be tested. And the school kept saying, yes, we know that something's going on, but we'll get around to it. And we finally went and had her tested privately. And she tested educable mentally handicapped. By the end of first grade, we had an IEP meeting with the school, and the school agreed, yes, she tests out at EMH, but we have a part-time SLD class that we'd like to try her in. And fortunately, our therapist, I guess, not Carol, I don't know, whoever did the evaluation was with us, the doctor was with us, and the doctor said, no, she will not be going to a part-time SLD. She tests at EMH. The school is required, back then they were anyway, because that was 30 years ago, the school is required to keep her at that. So we did end up getting her into an EMH class at the beginning of second grade. I had to drive her there because the bus wouldn't take her, and that was why the school didn't want to send her anywhere else, because they couldn't provide transportation. But it made all of the difference in the world academically for her. Once she got into the EMH class in second grade, she started off in the middle of the pack. By the end of that school year, because it was, I'm guessing because it was a smaller class and the teachers that she had, she ended up being at the top of the class. And she stayed in the special ed classes throughout elementary, through middle school. In high school, they again got her, she had a whole special ed department, and she got into the special ed department. She was actually valedictorian for her class of the special ed department. Yep. But getting her into that placement, into that correct placement, made all of the difference. She knew, even in elementary, they pulled her out for inclusion in art and PE, I think, and she knew that she wasn't keeping up, that she's not doing the same things. So once she got into a program where everybody was the same in that program, she doesn't see any differences in anybody right now. She is just as non-judgmental as can be.
That's great, that's great. And for us, school, both were challenging, of course, but I would have to say school was more challenging than home. Every day in kindergarten, a note came home from the teacher, Browdy did this, Browdy did that. And, you know, same thing, we didn't know what to do, we didn't know what was going on. One day he was so frustrated, he cracked all the crayons in the entire box. He was crying for help, you know. He couldn't read, write, do math. His fine motor skills were such that they expected him to zip his coat, he couldn't, and put the napkin out for his lunch to go on. So I would say for the strategies that were helpful were finding an appropriate environment that understood him, was empathic, and gave him the tools to really support him, made all the difference. But finding that place is hard. And also, even within appropriate environments, not all teachers have patience, infinite patience. But when Bradley met teachers who, you know, were just wonderful and heroes, Bradley said, "You get me," you know. So because they did, and he knew that from a very young age, and so he really performed for the teachers who got him. I think we're going to cut 2 last questions, and we're just going to do one more so that we can have time for Q&A. And we're going to be brief, okay? We'll just cut to the chase. What has been the most productive, successful treatment modality you have employed, and why?
About 30 years ago, I helped start Cyclic Vomiting Syndrome. Helped start Cyclic Vomiting Syndrome Association, which is still an entity, and I've been plugging that throughout JdVS. It's a good resource. We have a fine medical advisory board. So the strategy that tied into the strategy of being able to continue on with all we needed to do to treat it and to rise above it. So we also, I think Mollie's turning point after being diagnosed with JdVS at the age of 42 is anxiety medication. And it's made a noticeable difference in her ability to connect better with the world instead of having what she calls the medicine took away so many words in my head. And having her be able to verbalize that painted the picture of how it changed her life and her outlook. I also felt very strongly about rigid and strong behavior management. It brings to mind the day that I made her get out of our VW van as we were close to home and things were falling apart and I was not safe driving. I had her get out and walk the last block when she was about 5, 6. She still talks about it. It was horrifying for her, but she was safe and made an impact.
Thank you.
For us, the therapies that I talked about earlier, OT, PT, speech, that really helped. Growth hormones, Daniel fell off the growth curve when he was 2, or he started growth hormones when he was 2. At about 1, he was underneath the 0 percentile on the growth chart. So they looked into it, went to an endocrinologist, got the growth hormone started. I have mixed feelings about that, and we can talk about that later on, but I don't know if we would have made the same choice given knowing what we know now at the time. And then, of course, right now, mood stabilizers. He's on mood stabilizers, 2 different meds. I think we found what works the best. It's a trial and error thing because, of course, not everything works for everyone. But that really, really has made a big, big, big difference for him, just to control those big feelings.
We just got Tammy's diagnosis about 6 months before we attended the last conference 2 years ago. And at that conference, we came away from that conference with, you need to be seeing a neurologist, because Tam had the migraine headaches, she also had the vomiting. You need to be seeing a neurologist for the migraines, you need to be seeing a gastroenterologist for the vomiting. And it was like a light bulb went off. And we feel like we're intelligent people. It never, ever crossed our minds. When Tammy was growing up, she went to the doctors every year. We told the doctors what was going on. We blamed it all on them. All on her. You weren't eating enough. You're eating too much. You're not drinking enough water. You're drinking too much. We had no clue, but it wasn't until we got here and got those suggestions. I think the biggest thing that has helped us now is the gastroenterologist has given her Zofran for the vomiting. And that has worked for her. I know it doesn't for everyone, but for her it has worked as an anxiety medicine. Once she started on it and we've started not having the vomiting episodes that we should have, that we've had in the past, that we expected, we realized when she gets ready to go to a doctor's appointment or a dentist's appointment, she would start to feel like she was going to have diarrhea. And as soon as she'd feel like she was going to get sick, and it's going to go from diarrhea, it's going to go to throwing up, I'm going to be throwing up for hours, and then I'm going to get a migraine, and it would just get worse and worse in her head. And one of the doctors that was here last time said, don't let that cycle start. Like, again, never occurred to us. And now, when we're going someplace, she'll get up in the morning, you need to take your Zofran. And she still has issues. When she's in the middle of a cycle, it'll be worse and she hates it, yeah. She will tell you she hates vomiting. But it has gotten 10 times better, 10 times better.
Great, thank you. For us, medication management and speech-language therapy, hands down, have been the 2 most important modalities. The medication management was life-changing. Of course, it's hard to give your little one medication, but we learned a hard lesson when he was 2. Riley had an asthma attack, and he wasn't growing, and he was tiny, and they wanted to give him steroids and albuterol, both which can suppress height and growth, and we said to ourselves, but he's got to breathe, right? Like, there's no choice. So we learned the lesson that medications really are important. And then came the anxiety and the ADHD, inattentive, and then hyperactive mixed. you have to be able to be in the world, right? And so when we found the right cocktail, it enabled his anxiety to go from here to here. It's always going to be here, but he can get through his day. He can work. He can live independently, and he can, have relationships. And speech language therapy, he had really most of his life, from probably age 4 through 26, year-round. And I credit that for helping him know his boundaries with other people, spatial, and allowing him to have reciprocal conversation, understand language, and it's huge. For us, I can't overstate how important it was. I understand that we have more time, so we're going to go through the last 2 questions. Again, we're going to try to be brief, though. State your champion's special interest or fixation, if they have one.
The message board. Her attachment to Facebook and the world is probably the majority of how she spends her time when she's not sleeping. Knitting. She's addicted, literally, to knitting, and I understand addiction with knitting. So it's an addiction. If she doesn't have a project, she's not happy. She loves Special Olympics, a wide variety of sports which are available in Durango, Colorado. And she really likes to do public speaking. She speaks about, and she usually starts her speech to the county commissioners or the city clerks or whoever. I'm speaking for the people that are too severe and cannot talk for themselves. And then she proceeds to talk about her life with a disability and mentions JdVS. And I'm, needless to say, it's hard not to tear up.
For Daniel, definitely bellies and burping. That's his bellies, bellies and burping. He will ask random people to show him their bellies, which is very inappropriate, and talk about that in the grocery store, people lifting up their shirts to show him their bellies, and somehow he gets people to actually do that. And then music and cars, that's his favorite things. He wants to be a DJ one day, and so music and cars, but bellies and burping way top of the list.
I love it. I think Tammy's probably her biggest one right now is playing cards, and she is EMH. She can learn and has. She beats me probably as much as I beat her. So she really has gotten very good at it, but that is probably her biggest fixation right now. That and work. She has worked at Publix Publix is a grocery store in Florida. She has worked at Publix as a bagger for the last 16 or 17 years. And she can learn, and she has. She knows what she's doing, and they tell us at Publix that they will have customers come in that are grumpy, that everyone avoids, and they will go find whatever line Tammi is bagging in and move to that line because she is the one that will greet them and talk with them as they're going out.
So I probably don't have to tell you Bradley's special interests because you've probably seen them on his arms. It's his bracelets. When he was at boarding school in Southern Illinois, he wanted a bracelet. So he went to Walmart and he got paracord and he got plastic clips and he started making these bracelets. And he's evolved over the years to what he is making today, which is upcycling belts that people have worn and using fishing line and sewing either found objects, gems, jewels, beads onto these bracelets. And they're belts, but he cuts them off to make them bracelets and sells them, and so it's sort of a hobby that's morphing into a business, and that's his special interest. The last question I have for you is to share a brief, funny story about your JdVS champion, if you're comfortable doing so.
I'm not comfortable doing so because most of them are not appropriate for public consumption. However, I do want to take a moment and say that Mollie has matured in the last year that's noticeable. Her vocabulary is greater, her social senses are greater. I thought she had plateaued for the rest of her life, but it's not true. It's not true. She brings us spiritual peace. She has had 3 visits from people and one dog who've died that she describes to me. Grandma Twyla came in that window and she sat in that chair, and finally she talked so much I had to ask her to leave. And it was true. It was true. And she has some kind of a spiritual sense that she spreads around her. Thank you.
Thank you. Marinda.
I am going to share a somewhat inappropriate story. Please don't call CPS. We've had conversations already. We were remodeling our kitchen, so we were eating out quite a bit. It was about a 2-week span. I didn't do much grocery shopping, so we didn't have much in the fridge as far as soft drinks, sodas, those kind of things. I have those little cans because those end up in my closet in rows where Daniel would drink them to try and make his belly bigger. So one morning before school, I went downstairs. I was in the side of the kitchen. I opened the trash can to put something in there, and I found 3 beer cans. So I asked my husband, "Did you drink beer yesterday?" I didn't think so, and he said no. So of course I went to find Daniel, and he was laying on the couch. He was drunk. He had 3 Coors Light before school because there was nothing else to drink that had fizzy in it. So he wanted to make his belly big, and I had to call the school and tell him my child can't come to school today because he's drunk. So he slept until 1 o'clock that afternoon, and he swore he will never touch alcohol again because it made him feel very, very bad. So.
Okay, I think for Tammy's, rather than an individual story, Tam has a tendency to change sayings a little, and so we. She has a couple of them. Actually, my other daughter Candy and my grandson were helping me to remember these. The saying, killing 2 birds with 1 stone, Tammy has turned into killing 2 with the birdstone, which is our absolute favorite saying as a family. It's not the killing 2 with the birdstone? Well, it is one of our family favorites. Let's blow this popsicle stand has turned into let's hit this kickstand, which again we like. Easy peasy lemon squeezy has turned into easy peasy lemon squishy. And ice cream, you scream, we all scream for ice cream has turned into ice cream, you scream, we all holla. We all holler. Yep.
So there are many funny stories, but again, some of them are inappropriate. But this story, many of you might have already heard, but I'm going to repeat it. So Bradley and I were traveling together without any other family members, and we had to transfer planes. And so we were, I think, maybe in Philly. And there was this waiting room, and it happened to be like a big semicircle of chairs with carpet in the middle. And I said, "Do you want anything? I'll go get us something. You sit here with our carry-ons." So I went, and he said, "Yes, I would like Coke, and I guess I'll get some Mentos." So I brought it back to him, and I had wanted something different, so I was going to go somewhere else or the bathroom, so I left. And so I came back, and every single person was looking at me, and I thought, why are they staring at me? And then I looked at Bradley, and then I looked at the floor, and he had done the Mentos experiment when I was gone, right there, inside. And everybody wondered what I was going to do, I think. I didn't do anything. I didn't yell. I didn't scream. I was stunned. I felt like an idiot, right, that I hadn't thought about it. But anyway, and his shorts were wet, and again, that was a consequence, right? There was no store there. We didn't have any extra shorts, so he had to be wet. So anyway, that's my story. So how much time do we have for Q&A? Like if we shorten the tables a little bit? A few? Okay. So, anybody have any questions, burning questions they would like to ask while we're all up here? Does anyone else here have a co-diagnosis of pandas?
I wouldn't say we had a definitive diagnosis of pandas, but our son Noel, after having COVID a few times, ended up with a severe illness, and then afterwards experienced complete fears of things that he had never been fearful for. One of them was delivery trucks coming to our house. And if they would come to the door, he would scream on the road. He would be hysterical to the point that he started vomiting suddenly. It ended up that we did some IVIG and some high-dose steroids, and that, oh, I'm sorry. It ended up that we did a round of IVIG and some high-dose steroids during that illness, and after that, it was like a switch completely flipped. He had zero fears of that, anything related to it. He was able to try new things that he hadn't tried, and this was a kid that prior to those fears spent every waking minute that he could outside, and nothing like that had ever concerned him. So a lot of our doctors, although they didn't officially give that diagnosis, believe that that's what occurred during that time.
Okay, thank you. Somebody else had a hand up?
Yeah, I just wondered, Miranda, I just wondered about the growth hormones. You mentioned if you knew what you knew then, you wouldn't have done them or
Well,
used them.
We're having a roundtable on that.
Okay.
And that's going to be tomorrow morning.
Oh, fine.
Yes,
Let's
So-
park that one.
yes, yes.
Okay.
I would be happy to answer.
Anyone else?
Hi, I'm an educator, and I was just curious about your educational journey that you were talking about. You said EMH, she was diagnosed as EMH. Oh, sorry.
Okay, Tammi, and again, it was 30 years ago, but Tammi was diagnosed educable mentally handicapped. That, because at that time we didn't know anything about a syndrome, it was just dealing with the intellectual, what was going on. So the Palm Beach County in South Florida had a special needs program. They had trainable mentally handicapped, and Tam fell under the educable mentally handicapped. Is it what? Would it be today's version of a global delay? That I do not know. I would guess that it probably would.
Okay.
I would guess that. An unspecified. Okay, unspecified delay. Yeah, very much so, because that's what it was.
Okay, thank you.
Nicole?
When you guys referenced some of the anxiety medications that the kids have taken, is there anything in particular or a particular medication you found to be very helpful? And if so, at what age did you start those medications?
So, Brady started Prozac maybe age 6. I think I saw a result. But when he was in middle school, his anxiety got so high, he was sort of hearing voices. So we had to add Risperdal. That's an anti-anxiety seizure medication. And it totally helps organize him, his thoughts, and normalize him. That's not the right word, but it changed his behavior and reduced his anxiety. In the end, it wasn't the right medication for us, but there wasn't anything else that was offered. But when he went on oxcarbazepine, which is in trade name Trileptal, that changed his life and our lives. It was just, for him, a phenomenal off-shelf anti-anxiety medication. It's a seizure medication as well. Spell it. Oxcarbazpine is the generic name. Trileptal, Trileptal is the trade name. He also now takes mirtazapine at night, mirtazipine. These are all under the care of a psychiatrist. And those two really work to reduce his anxiety.
Lexapro, age 42 after diagnosis. And for PRN, for airline flights, hydroxyzine.
Another question? Okay, this will be our last question.
Was there any notable difference when they hit puberty? Did anything significantly change
Yes.
besides their body?
Hypersexuality is one of the key, key manifestations. It's not talked about much. There's not time, but we're around.
Okay, so now what we're going...
Elizabeth,
No,
I'm sorry.
no, that's fine. We didn't see many changes, except he wanted to be more independent. And he got, wanted to pick out his own clothes and stuff like that. So we have 4 groups, and we can rotate after